Now we're going to do the stretch, ease, anticipate tutorial. First, we'll do the bounce. So what you want to do is you want to start a new ActionScript 3.0 document. You want to check the properties and make sure that you change the frames per second to 12. It's much easier to do these tutorials with fewer frames per second because you don't have to draw as many frames. 550 wide, 400 high. Okay. Make sure that you've got it fitting in window, and then save it. Save it to your desktop, and we're going to call this one stretch. When you want to show something that is bouncing, you have to show it using stretch and squash. Stretch and squash is a very important concept. It's one of the principles of animation, and it allows you to show the actions of forces, energy. Momentum stretches and inertia squashes the object. I'm going to change the names of the layers, so we're going to have the first layer will be bounce, and then add a second layer to be anticipate. Lock anticipate, and let's go to bounce, and on the first keyframe we're going to start drawing once we have our production sketch. You want to draw a production sketch on a piece of paper so you can see what your keyframes are going to be. So I have a production sketch already put together, and I'll show you what it is. This is my production sketch. So first you have the starting position, which is a round ball, and that's the first position. Then there's a bottom bounce position when it's flattened, and a side impact position where it's flattened. And then we have to have an explosion, so there's this popping. So my numbers here tell me which frames I'm going to put them in, so how much time is going to pass between these, and I've anticipated that I'm going to have frame 1 for the start, then frame 5 at the bottom. It's going to take 4 frames to drop. Then on the side, frame 9 when it hits, and that's another 4 frames, and then it's going to explode to frame 15. Okay. And now I want to also show that you will then put in betweens. So in between frame 1 and frame 5, frame 3 is going to be stretching out as it falls. So that's the stretch, and then the squash is 5. Then as it is bouncing to the side, 7 is also stretched, and then 9, and then 15 explode. And you can put in even more in-betweens. So 2 is starting to stretch, it hasn't gotten quite as stretched. 4 is extremely stretched. These are in-betweens. You see they're in between those keyframes. 6 in between 5 and 7 is not quite as stretched, but it's starting. 8 is also stretched, and then 9 is when it hits. So this is how you do in-betweening. So let's start out by going in and drawing frame 1, and then press F6 on frame 5, puts in a keyframe, and then go to frame 9, F6, and then frame 15, F6. So since I had not drawn anything, these will remain empty. Let's select the oval tool to use for this because it will go a lot faster with the oval tool. So let's use a red fill and a black stroke. So I'm going to get my oval tool, and here's my stroke color. I'm going to say, oh, let's make it black. And then my fill color, let's make it a nice bright red. Boom. Okay, I can check my properties and see how wide is my stroke. Right now it's 1. Maybe I want it to be some other number. Say, let's say 3. Let's put in 3. Okay, I'm going to collapse that so I can see what I'm doing. Now we want to put our first keyframe up here, right? Then one down here, and then one over here. If I hold down Shift and then click and drag, I could start drawing a circle. And then down at the bottom, I don't want to hold down Shift because I want it to be flattened. I want it to be generally underneath. So I'm going to go to frame 5, and I want to see where it is. So I'm going to turn on my onion skin. Here's my onion skin. Shows me where my last thing was, and that's going to have a blue tinge to it. And then if there's a picture in front, there will be a green tinge to it. That's so you can tell which side it's on. Now I'm going to draw a flattened shape down here. I'm going to try to make it look like it's related to that one. So there we go. And I want to make sure that I've got it in a good position. Looks good. If it wasn't, I could go get my selection tool and move it a little bit. But if you do that, you want to make sure to select the keyframe so it selects the outer edge as well as the fill, because the stroke and the fill are not connected actually. Don't have it land exactly on the bottom because it'll go off the frame. So just, there's a pretend floor here. Let's put it that way. Okay, let's see, we want to move it just a little. Use your arrow tools, and you can move it with your arrow tools. That looks good. Now I'm going to go to the next frame. And here we have this one, and we want to have it against the wall. Make sure you have your oval tool. And we want to have it nicely flattened against the wall. There we go. Nicely flattened against the wall. Okay. And then for frame 15, we'll go to frame 15. So frame 9 is when it hits. Frame 15, we want to have these splotches. So I'm going to press Insert Timeline, blank keyframe. Okay, so Insert Timeline, blank keyframe. I'm going to get the brush tool, and I'm going to make sure that this is a very, very wide brush shape, because I want to make these splotches. And if I want to, I can turn on the object drawing mode, and that will keep it from sort of disintegrating. But let's just go with this. Let's just go with this. And we'll draw some explosions coming out from it. You can make them any shape you want here, because there's no real law about this. You're just pretending, right? As long as it looks like, in general, like it's splashing out, like maybe a drop of water hit something and exploded. That's fine. And here we've got the ink bottle tool, which is shortcut letter S. And with the ink bottle tool, you can provide a stroke around whatever shape you click on. Since I've turned on the object drawing mode, it's got these interesting outlines, which is fine. It's kind of fun. Okay, now I'm going to Command S. I'm going to turn off the onion skinning, but I'm going to turn on marker range all. I'm going to go to the first, and I'm going to loop it. Oh, there we go. Okay, you have to loop it first. And then I'm going to play, and we can see what it looks like. It always shows something selected. I don't know why. It's been driving me crazy for the last like 10 years. Okay, Command S. So now we want to put in the in-betweens. And now once again, we want to have our onion skinning on. And we want to go to the marker range for the onion skinning, and let's say 5. So we can see more than one of the positions at a time. And what we want to do is we want to make sure we have our oval tool, okay? We want to go to the particular frame where we want to add a keyframe. And we're going to 3. I'm going to press, okay, F7 will give you a blank keyframe because it used to be the shortcut and they didn't for some reason designate it as a shortcut, but it still works, so I don't know. It's the way Adobe is. So now we want to draw the in-betweens. So here we have frame 3 and we want it to be stretching down a little bit, and we've got all the right color and everything, so we just say, okay, here's where it's going to be. I'm going to draw it stretching down. I'm going to make sure I select the keyframe. I'm going to move it over. Click on Shift Up moves more frames at a time. And I think maybe it should be a little bigger, so I'm going to cheat a little, and I'm going to say, okay, make it bigger. Okay, good. And I'm going to get my oval tool again, and I'm going to go to the next keyframe, which will be keyframe number 7. I'm going to press F7 to get myself a new keyframe, and I'm going to draw in. Now this is the thing, you cannot get it to draw at an angle, so what you have to do is you have to draw it the shape you want it, choose the free transform tool, select the keyframe so it selects the entire thing, and now you can rotate it and put it where you wanted it. You can want it a little bigger again. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to Command S, and I'm going to select my free transform tool again. And now let's see if we go ahead and turn off, let's see, marker range all, and we want to turn off that and loop it. See, marker range all again. Okay, and loop it. Starts to look a little bit more believable here. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to turn off looping. At this point, we want to do the final in-betweens, okay, and make the ball explode. So I'm going to go to each of these frames that I hadn't yet selected. I'm going to put in a keyframe. First, I'm going to start by putting in keyframe number 12 for the explosion. I'll get my brush. I'll turn on my onion skinning, and I'm going to give it fewer frames to onion skin so it doesn't get too confusing. And now I'm going to say, okay, here we go. We want to have the beginning or the middle of the explosion. And here is where you can get really creative, because you want to make it look like this thing is exploding. And let's see, I'm going to turn this off. I don't want it to be. But I'm going to go ahead. Let's break apart. Select the whole thing. I'm going to modify break apart, so I'll be able to be a little bit more specific about changing the colors anyway. Okay, so there's one, and I'm going to. Okay, and I'm going to go to, let's say, here. And now for some of these in-betweens, we've got basically what you have here is a shape that you can copy. Okay, so we got this thing selected, Command C, Command V, and then you just move it where you wanted it. And if you want it to be a little bit more stretched out, and maybe this one a little bit less stretched out. Same thing with this guy, just Command C, move it where you want it. Actually, this one's probably going to be more stretched out because it's just hit. It's got more energy being transferred. That's good. And maybe rotate it a little bit differently. And at this point, you might want to turn off snapping because there's always some kind of snapping thing that's going on here. And then once you get the snapping off, you can make much more specific and tight changes here. And since this has been moving a little bit longer, you get to make it a little bit more round. It's starting to slow down, and then it hits. Okay, Command Save, turn off the end skinning, turn on the looping, go back to the beginning and play it. And it looks very convincing in a very strange kind of way. So that's the bounce segment of this tutorial.